There we go. Now we're starting up live. Yay! Hello and welcome to Saturday Night Live here on Dylan the Nose, episode 226. And I've got the glamorous Jerry Fletcher with me tonight. How are you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? Dawn. I called you Dawn because we were just talking about it. Dylan.
Doing okay. It was a long day today. It was a nice day, a fantastic day here on the Eastern Seaboard. 50s, upper 50s. It was up there your way too, right?
Yep. It was nice out. You still had to wear a jacket, but it was comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, it's cold. But yep, today is our first Dylan Knows list show of 2018. So that's great. And it gets kind of hard because we've been doing this show for 4.5 years now, and we've pretty much done everything. So now it gets kind of hard to find some lists here and there, but we're digging through. We've got some ideas coming up that I'll share with you down the line for the upcoming year. We'll get some, but we'll have some good stuff and interesting things. I think I want to get back to music again. I think I want to do 90s music maybe not next month because that's Valentine's Day month, maybe March. Maybe we could do best like 90s songs. So we did the best 1980 songs a few months back. Go and watch that episode. It was really cool. But it is our list show. We pick a topic and we choose any number of things. Usually it's 10, but sometimes we've done 5. Sometimes we've done 25. Today we're going to do 15 because I begged and pleaded Jerry. Said, Jerry, can we please do 15? Because we're doing the top 15 movies of 1988. And when we were doing our research, I'm looking at it and I'm like, good movie, good movie, good movie, good movie, good movie, good movie, good movie. And then before I knew it, I had a list of like 20 to 30 movies. I was like, Jerry, can we do it? And she's like, yeah, it's your show. Do whatever you want, right?
No, it was a good year. Surprisingly, I forgot. But it was. I had a lot too.
But we were talking about this before the show. This 1988 has a kind of a stain year for my baseball team. I'm centered in Baltimore, and the Baltimore Orioles are my team. And I'm sure people who might have been following baseball back in the 80s will more than likely remember this because it was something that they'd never really seen in their lifetime. The 1988 Baltimore Orioles started their 1988 season 0-21. They lost 21 straight games. And I was, let me see, what were that's 30, it was 14, right? Yeah, we were 14.
15.
Yeah, 14, 15, yeah. So I went to a couple of the games. Oh, I forgot to tell you, we still went to a couple of the games because Memorial Stadium was such an awesome stadium. I mean, Camden Yards is fantastic, and you've been there, so you know how it is. But Memorial Stadium, which is where they played from when they came in 54 to about 92, was absolutely insane. It was a great stadium, but everybody was absolutely crazy. There weren't a lot of, Camden Yards is kind of that upper crust, upper class type of, people with the sky boxes and stuff like that. No, these were all beer swilling, blue collar workers screaming and yelling at people, throwing shit on the field and stuff like that. Well, that year, we went during the summer, obviously, because baseball is best during the summer. And that was when they used to hand out the All-Star ballots. I don't know if you remember those, Jerry, where you had to pop them out. Did you ever go to games like in the 80s?
Yeah, I don't remember getting.
There were ballots that they had the American League, National League, and everything, and you had to pop them out. It was like the hanging chads from like the 2000 election. So you had to pop those things out, and then you give them back to your usher, and then they would put them, or you put them in the box they had there, and then Major League Baseball would take them and count the votes. Well, the Orioles were sucking that one game that I was at, and they gave us all our ballots. And so we were so upset we were so upset in the upper deck that literally everybody in our section, well, one person started, then everybody started doing it, turned their all-star ballots into paper airplanes and started throwing them onto the field.
It reminds me of that movie Major League. You guys were like living it for real.
It was terrible. It was awful.
Now,
But
they set the record with 21 straight losses. Was that?
No, I think the record's 24.
Well,
that was from back in, but that's like it was like the modern record. Like the 24 in a row was like the 1930s or 40s or something like that. One of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a bad year, and I think I told her I think we ended up like with 110 losses or something that year. But then '89, we were fantastic. We were one game away from winning the playoffs or getting into the playoffs rather. So we didn't. I think Toronto actually ended up winning the Super Bowl. Maybe that no, '89 was the year of the Bay one, the Oakland San Francisco, where we had the earthquake during the World Series. So they didn't make it that far, but still. But what was also interesting about it, and another Baltimore connection, which you'll see maybe some of these or all of them, 3 films were actually filmed in Baltimore, or in the Maryland, I should say, in Maryland, in 19 or were released in 1988. Clara's Heart, which was Whoopi Goldberg and a very, very young Neil Patrick Harris. They filmed over on the Eastern Shore in Ocean City. Hairspray, the original Hairspray movie, was filmed in Baltimore, obviously with John Waters. And then The Accidental Tourist, which was William Hurt and Barbara Hershey, I think.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Kathleen Turner, but now it's probably Barbara.
One of those two, but that was filmed in Baltimore also. So that was around the time that Baltimore was starting to get a little bit more experience when it comes to being made in films. Because I mean, Barry Levinson made some movies in town, Diner, Tin Men, Avalon, stuff like that, and John Waters, of course, because they were local guys. But we very rarely got a lot of other movies to film in Baltimore. But this sort of helped spiral that into making it being able to do more. We like The Bedroom Windows, another one that came out a little later than that, and then there was a whole bunch. So Kevin Bacon was in town a bunch of times to film a bunch of different movies. So that was pretty neat. And finally, another interesting thing about this year was when I was doing the research for this, there was like 24 sequels or third-parters that came out this year. It's like Poltergeist 3 and Critters 2 and House 2 is like they were giving sequels away.
Wait, House 2? What was House 1? I don't remember House.
The House movies are these horror films that have an alumnus from Cheers in them. The first one had George Wendt in it, and the second one had John Ratzenberger in it. I don't really know much about it. It must be some sort of haunted house or something, but I guess it did well enough.
I keep thinking of the TV show with the medical guy, right? House?
that was yeah, but no, this is a horror one. They made a joke about it in Scream in '97. So actually, Scream 2 it was in '98. But oh well. But I've talked enough, so I'm going to hand it off to Geri. So Geri, you have an honorable mention, and then after your honorable mention, go ahead and do your number 15 also. Okay.
Okay, so my honorable mention, it was a movie, but it wasn't a movie. It was more of like a documentary, but it was sort of like new. It was like a new concept in '88, and that was U2's Rattle and Hum. So what they did was when they were on their tour, they allowed like a camera crew to join them, and they took all this footage and they edited it together, and it was a really fun experience because you got to not only see the concert on screen, but then see all the background and like everything that's happening behind the scenes. And it was unique and clever. Like now, I mean, you could do that and go on to YouTube, or everybody makes like, behind the scene type things. But for 1988, it was really unique. So I wanted to use that as my honorable mention.
Oh, no, that is awesome. Yeah, I've you can go onto YouTube now and type in U2 Rattle and Hum Live, and they'll do snippets from that movie. They'll have the specific songs in their version of it in the film. Yeah, that was the concert documentary, and that was what the '80s were a lot. They did the concert documentary was big, and the comedy stand-up show. Eddie Murphy did Delirious and stuff like that. They released those in movie theaters because movies were starting to become hugely popular. More and more people were going out to the movies, and now is the time to why don't we spread our wings a little bit. So why not do a concert, in a movie theater or a stand-up thing where you might not be able to afford to go to, a U2 concert. They might not have been in your town, they only have a certain amount of towns they go visit. And then same with the stand-up comedians, Eddie Murphy, when he did Delirious, he was he was like the biggest comedy star, and nobody could go to any of his shows because they were expensive or always sold out. So this is a way that you can spread the wealth, and it's a fantastic, great thing to do. And good job on you too on that.
Yeah.
Number 15.
All right, my number 10 or 15. Oh my God, that's right. The number 15. I've talked about this movie before, but I really love it, and it's Working Girl with Melanie Griffith and Han Solo, Harrison Ford, and Sigourney Weaver. So, again, she's a receptionist. She's sort of down and out in her luck. Her fiance is this jerk. she's sort of stuck in this dead-end secretarial job in Staten Island, but then she gets this sort of opportunity to go work for Wall Street for this really high exec woman named Catherine, played by Sigourney Weaver. He goes and works for her. He like dumps the boyfriend. She's like, okay, fresh start for me. And, you know, she really likes her because she's willing to listen to her ideas. But then she comes to find out, well, what happens is Sigourney Weaver goes on a ski trip and gets hurt, and then calls her and says, can you sort of just take over for me while I'm, you know, healing? I guess she was stuck at this ski resort in Colorado or whatever. So when she goes through her records and her files, she realizes that she stole one of her ideas. So to get the revenge, she's going to completely pose as her, or pose as herself, but at that executive level, and roll with the project. And then she meets Harrison Ford. He plays Jack, and they sort of partner together on this project, and they fall in love. And of course, it turns out that he is really Sigourney Weaver's boyfriend. It just is really fun, late 80s movie. Joan Cusack plays her best friend. It's hilarious, like sidekicky best friend with all like the what's the word I'm thinking of? Like she's got the sassy comebacks and the little
the typical cliched best friend type of thing, but done in a very well. I mean, if you want to get somebody to do it, get Joan Cusack to do it. She's like an ace at it.
Right. Yeah, and it's just a cute, great movie. So it had to make my list for '88, most definitely. So I started my list with number 15.
It was number 16 on my list. I would have moved on. It was number 16. Yeah, it could be my own mention. Absolutely. I love the film. It's great. And I'm trying to remember, but I mean, Harrison had little bits of comedy in Raiders and Last Crusade, and well, Last Crusade was '89, but Raiders and Han Solo, stuff like that. But he never really did like a straight up comedy film. Maybe American Graffiti, but that wasn't quite the same thing. Yeah. This was like his first time. He's like, wow, Harrison Ford can actually do more than be like the, you know, action star type of guy. And he was a great, you know, comedian. And I think that was also where they started a lot of the comparisons with him and one of the classic actors. I can't think of his name right now. Cagney, not James Cagney, but one of these other really great 1940s and 50s actors who everybody loves. They said Clark. Maybe no, it's not Clark Gable either, but it's sort of like who's that?
Cary Grant, maybe.
Yeah, it was Cary Grant. That's what it was. I got the CNG in there somewhere. They started like doing comparisons, like Harrison Ford could be like the next Cary Grant because he can do all these different types of roles and stuff like that. So, it's a fantastic film. And, you know, and even Sigourney, you get to see her a little bit more bitchy and mean than you're used to seeing her also. But I have an interesting story about Working Girl. And this actually coincides with one of the movies on my list. It coincides with one of the movies on my list. We in '88, my dad was married to my first stepmom, and we were spending, my sister and I were like spending the weekend or something with them, and so they thought, why don't we go see the movies? You know, there's some cool stuff out there. They all wanted to see Working Girl, and I didn't. I wanted to see Scrooged. So we actually lucked out, and we found the theater that was showing both of them real close to each other. So they let me go see Scrooge by myself, and the three of them went to see Working Girl. And the funny thing about that was, not in that area, but on the outskirts of the town, there was a blackout. So, you know, the movie theater was still running okay, but that's just weird things you remember. It's not interesting, but that's my little Working Girl story. It's funny. I eventually saw it on video and DVD and stuff like that, but it's just like, I didn't see it originally in the movie theaters because I didn't want to, because I guess in '88, you know, 14-year-old boy, I didn't really want to see, you know, this type of film, you know, but now as you get older, it's the type of thing it's like, you should have gone and seen that, you know. I got a couple of those stories, actually. I'll tell you my Raiders story one day, too. I think I might have already, where I had my choice to see Raiders of the Lost Ark when it first came out in '81 for my birthday, or Cannonball Run, and I picked Cannonball Run.
Oh, yeah.
It was '81. I was 8 years old.
Age appropriate.
Oh, well, but that's just a funny story. But my number 15 is a film that I keep every time I talk to somebody about film or this film in general. I say it is a totally underrated film because unfortunately it got swept into the whole Brat Pack thing. And at that time in '88, the Brat Pack was starting to get to that annoying point where people were getting frustrated with them. Movies Young Guns. And Young Guns did something really amazing that in the 80s, Westerns weren't that big of a deal. You know, the 60s was when the Westerns were huge. And then they started to die off. And then, you know, periodically you'd have like a Silverado or a Buckaroo Banzai, which isn't quite it's like a pseudo Western, but it wasn't a full on Western type of film. Young Guns sort of brought that back. And also, you know, I would even say, gathered so much to say that it paved the way for Dances with Wolves and stuff like that. These other Westerns, you know, a Tombstone or stuff like that came out in the 90s. And it was not, and again, it had the stink of the Brat Pack, because at that time, you know, they were all becoming annoying and drug addicted and stuff like that, and punching out photographers and shit like that. But you had Emilio Estevez, you have Kiefer Sutherland, you had Lou Diamond Phillips, and I forget some of the other those. Is that
Charlie Sheen was in it?
Yeah, that's right. Charlie was in the first one. I forgot about that. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I always am to the moon. I always remember how great of a movie. I love the movie, and I love the sequel also. The second one is just as good as the first one. And I've never been a huge fan of the Western, but this one sort of made it kind of cool. And the fact that it was about Billy the Kid in general also. And Emilio, you know, despite what you might think about whatever Emilio says, he did a really damn good Billy the Kid. I'm sorry, he just did. And Kiefer, you get the stoic Kiefer, and even you didn't really get comedic Charlie either. He was more of a dramatic, actiony type of Charlie. He wasn't like the Charlie Sheen from the Three Musketeers that came out a few years later. He was sort of the serious, like that type of thing. So Young Guns is my number 15. I really, really enjoyed, and I always talk about, tell people, you got to see it. You might it's got part of the Brat Pack movies. No, it really isn't, because it's completely different.
Yeah. It's actually higher up on my list, but I'm glad that it made your list, because I do enjoy that. When it comes on, it's the one that you sort of keep on and you watch, you know.
And you know what? This is funny. I don't actually own a copy of it, so I went to Amazon. I was like, okay, I'm going to get both copies. I'm going to get Young Guns 2. I didn't see Young Guns 2 like by itself on Amazon, and not even on Blu-ray either. It's always attached to like one of these like 3 or 4, you know, you get 3 or 4 movies for the price of one type of thing. And the other movies on there are like, yeah, I don't want to see them. I want to see Young Guns too, you know? Yeah. So I don't know if they're saving it for, because I think it was like a few years later. So maybe they're saving it for an anniversary edition or something like that. But I think I have Young Guns on my list to get though. So I'm going to probably pick that up through Amazon very shortly. But yeah. Excellent.
I like it. All right, my number 14 is another one we've talked about before, but it's very sweet, and she's having a baby. And it's Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth McGovern, which they make a very cute couple. So they are Jack and Christy, and they're like high school sweethearts. And then, you know, they're in a relationship, they grow up, they get married. They had a point in their relationship where she starts saying, I want to have a baby. And he's like, I'm not ready. And his like best friend is Alec Baldwin. He's this total player, you know, different girl every night, pig. And so a little piece of Kevin Bacon's sort of envious of Alec Baldwin, you know, because it's like, well, he's like living the life, you know, so to speak. But at the same time, really has no one to go home to. So it's like, what do you do? So it's this whole, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but it's just very cute because it shows how conflicted Kevin Bacon is. And I think most men, you know, they reach that point where it's not, I don't want to say the wife was like, we're going to have a baby, it's time. But usually it's the wife sort of initiating, like, you know, maybe it's time to start having this conversation and talk about it. And, you know, it just he shows us like what men go through, the insecurities and the fear and the, you know, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to be ready for this? It's just a really nice film and a nice piece to show you that stage in a couple of.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a good one. It's not on my list, but it is a good view of what I mean, and kind of a serious type of view at how. I mean, it has its comedy aspects to it, but it's a very realistic portrayal of something like that that occurs. And to be honest, I think John Hughes might. I don't think he wrote it. But I think he was either a producer or he had some sort of connection to it. So that's sort of. It was sort of kind of his type of style of film as well. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of a different film, but you know, but Kevin Bacon is Kevin Bacon. I mean, he's really, you know, it's such a great actor, good guy in general, and you know, he's just you know, one of those actors, just a pure gem. And Alec Baldwin is always good at playing those smarmy roles, particularly this early in his career. I mean, he had this and other stuff before he started getting a little bit more serious. So.
I apologize for the dog if you can hear him in the background.
At first, I thought it was John for a second. I was like, oh man, this is going to be
some poor soul trying to go for a walk, or someone's walking their dog, and he has to always bust balls. And I always say to him, I love it when it's the neighbor across the street in his yard. I'm like, dude, that's his house. He owns that property. You can't bark at him. Let him have his time in his yard. A little busybody and bark away. And here I am having this like dissertation with the dog, like, stop barking. It's his house. So probably somebody will.
It's okay. It's funny. My number 14 is it's time for Wapner. It's Rain Man. Rain Man. Tom Cruise. Up, come on down, buddy, real quick. Say goodnight. No one won't say goodnight. So there's my Noah. Good night.
Hey guys.
Let me move. I'll get your sister.
Oh, up on the shelf jammies. That's cute.
Yeah, their other ones aren't clean yet, so we gotta clean them up. But they're nice and warm.
I wear their Christmas ones like all year round. I don't like separate the pajamas for guys.
Absolutely. But yeah, Rain Man's my number 14. I talked about Barry Levinson earlier. He's a local guy. He directed this. Directed Dustin Hoffman to an Oscar award winning. Cruise was nominated, but he didn't win it. This was one of those movies that 88 was kind of a bad year for me with Tom Cruise because that craptastic Cocktail, which we talked about before, came out this year, I think. And it just, this whole Tom Cruise thing, you know, Top Gun and all this other BS and stuff like that. But then Rain Man comes out and you actually, again, it's sort of like Young Guns, you know, it has the stain of a Brat Pack, but it shows that they are so much more than the Brat Pack. This is what Tom Cruise pretty much showed you. He showed you that he was actually a pretty good actor. But the funny thing is, you know, you don't think it's going to be that way because he starts off playing pretty much every other role he's ever played. Kind of the jerky dick type of guy. But what happens is you begin to see his character change as he starts taking care of his brother, who has autism, I think. Is that what it was? It was the...
Yeah, I think it's like Aspergery, right? Yeah, because he's good with the numbers and he's autistic.
Yeah, and, you know, and so the main reason why he never knew he had a brother, or he thought he did, and then it sort of came flooding back to him because he needed all this help and they put him in a hospital, stuff like that. But then when their parents died, you know, they discovered that, you know, he was expecting this big payout because he thought he was the only kid. He was going to get all this money in his inheritance. And they discovered that, you know, some of it was funneled to this other person. He doesn't know who it is. So he made his way to get his brother. And the main reason why he did it was to try to get the money from him. But gradually that led to a cross-country journey where the two of them bonded and connected. And the one scene that always still makes me tear up is right there near the end, where, you know, after a while, once Tom Cruise changes and realizes that he wants to take care of his brother and doesn't think he should go back to the hospital and wants to be his caregiver and his guardian because he never knew his brother and he wants to know his brother, and he had this great time with him during this week. And he goes and has this court case, and they end up finding for the state that he needs to go to a hospital. And spoiler, I'm sorry if you haven't seen it yet. So Tom Cruise loses, basically, and you've never seen that before either. But he loses, but he wins because we truly believe that Dustin Hoffman's character probably should be in the hospital, the special hospital. It isn't a bad hospital. It isn't one of these crooked, terrible places. It was a place that people can help him, you know, survive. And while Tom Cruise was doing a pretty good job of it, there's a lot of other aspects that we see during the movie that he's going to have trouble dealing with this. And he just doesn't have the temperament. Even though he's changing, that could change again. So, you know, in the end, even though he lost, he kind of won also because he still gets to see his brother whenever he wants to. He just doesn't have custody of him. And just the scene where after the judge or the doctor leaves to let them have a little moment together. It's just the scene where I think Tom Cruise is sitting and Dustin Hoffman just leans in and just leans against his head, and the two of them just have this quiet scene together. You know, just shows that he understands what Tom Cruise was trying to do for him, his brother was trying to do for him, and appreciates it, but he just can't say how much he appreciates it. So he does this little head thing, and it just even thinking about it now, it just makes me tear up. Oh. It made me start changing my mind a little bit about Tom Cruise as an actor. And then all of a sudden in 91, he throws Born on the 4th of July in my face. And I'm like, God damn, you're a good actor. He should have won the freaking Oscar for that, but that's besides the point. Anyway, but yeah, that showed that he was more than the Tom Cruise that we all expected, the risky business, Top Gun, Tom Cruise-y type person, that he actually was an actually pretty damn good actor. And I still, despite what you may think about his personal life, he's still a damn good actor. And that's my number 14 is Rain Man.
That's awesome. It's higher on my list, but it's there too. All right, my number 13 is Mystic Pizza. So this is a really cute movie about 3 girls, 2 sisters, and their best friend, and they work at a pizza shop called Mystic Pizza, and it takes place during the summer after their senior year. So it's like, you know, you're still a kid, you're not quite an adult, but you finish school, and it's like that now what exciting time in your life where am I going to college or what's next kind of thing. So you got JoJo, the one friend, and she is going to marry her boyfriend, Bill. Bill won't have sex with JoJo until they're married. He doesn't believe in sex before marriage. So she agrees to it because she wants to have sex with him so badly. But then ends up not going through with it, obviously, because that's not the right reason to get married, just to have sex. Then you have Daisy, who's played by Julia Roberts, and she has a sister named Kat. And Daisy thinks that she's met Mr. Right at the local, you know, bar, Watering Hole, where they all go and hang out. But she comes from a Portuguese family, and his family's sort of like uppity, you know, country club type, and they sort of look down on her like and she also has a hard time with her mom because her sister is going to go to college where she kind of hasn't really found herself yet. Kat, on the other hand, is on her way to Yale, but she takes this nanny position from this guy named Tim. Because Tim's wife is going to be in Europe for the summer. And she sort of hits it off with Tim because Tim was also a Yale graduate. And she sort of gets these grandiose ideas that maybe Tim will leave his wife for her. She's very close to the baby and sort of like, you know, replace the whole world, and she'll become that, you know, that'll be part of her world. So at the same time, Mystic Pizza is gaining popularity because their pizza sauce has a secret ingredient in it that's never to be revealed. But this famous food critic who goes around and sort of makes the various places heard of them. So he comes out to the shop, has something to eat, and then they're waiting to see what his response is. So it's just this really cute, like, coming of age movie where you see, 3 months worth of the lives of these people in this little town in Connecticut, and that's what it is.
It's really cool because it's not on my list, but it's really cool because it's one of these films that, you know, can juggle so many different stories, and it actually does a very good job of hitting all the right notes, and you get a good story arc for all the characters, the main characters. And, you know, they might not necessarily be exactly what you would do or what you believe, and they might not always seem to be maybe the best people in the world, but you know what, that's realistic. I mean, let's face it, it's a fairly realistic portrayal of what life is like after college, and it's, you know, slice of life type of films are that way, and you're not always going to like the main characters, but you know, there's also aspects of it you do like about it. And young Julia Roberts, how can you go wrong? I mean, she wasn't a star yet, but she was getting really close with that, and Fried Green Tomatoes coming up, I think, a little later down the line, and then her big hit with Pretty Woman in 91. So, you know, she was starting to show, you know, people are starting to get a little, who is this person? But, you know, it was still, in general, that was just a huge, small part of it. And that's what, unfortunately, a lot of people still remember about the film, is that it was Julia Roberts' one of her first films, stuff like that, and misses out on the rest of the aspect of the film. What's neat about Mystic, Connecticut, though, is I actually... it's a real place,
Yeah.
And Dawn and I actually we took the train up to Rhode Island in Labor Day weekend, this past Labor Day weekend, because my stepbrother was getting married. He lives in Providence, Rhode Island, and so instead of taking a plane or whatever, we figured, why don't we take the train? We can park the car at the train station in Baltimore and take it up to Providence. And by the way, Providence is beautiful. If you ever get a chance, Geri, go to Providence if you've ever been there before. If you've never been there before, it's fantastic. But on the way up to Providence, there's a bunch of stops. There's a train station, so you're going to stop at a lot of different places. Mystic was one of those places, actually, and it is just as cool as you think it would be. It's a seaside town. It's fantastic. So that's a good one. My number 13 is might not be. A lot of people think it might be one of his better works, and I agree with it. That's why it's on my list. But it might not be exactly what you're looking for. It's Steve Martin and Michael Caine, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Frank Oz directed it, that of the Miss Piggy and Fozzie Bear and Yoda. But Frank Oz has always been a really good director anyway. And the basic premise is Steve Martin is an American con man, decides that he's too good over in America. He wants to stretch his legs over in Europe a little bit. So he goes over to Europe and tries his hand at conning the local people there. But he runs afoul of Michael Caine's master con man. And the two of them start butting heads, and they realize that neither of them are going to win because they both have different styles and they're both really, really good. So then they decide to team up to take out a mark, played by actress Glenn Headley, who passed away last year, God rest her soul. The goal is for them to work together to try to con her. I think she's got money or something, and they're trying to con her out of money. So the two of them try to do a teamwork thing. They start off before they hit Glenn Headley to try to work things out, but it doesn't quite work out. But no, they try one last time to try to go after Glenn Headley's character, but it doesn't work out. So they split up, and they both try to come at her at different angles. So you get to see con upon con upon con upon con, and again has probably one of the best twist endings you've never expected. I mean, you might have expected if you keep watching the film a little bit, you might see little cues here and there, but it is a great twist ending to it. And it's one of those, as I said, it's not necessarily my favorite Steve Martin film. There's a whole bunch of other ones I like better than this one, but it's still one of his better performances. And Michael Caine is Michael Caine. He can't go wrong. And Glenn Headley is fantastic in this as well. So that's my number 13.
Actually, I don't know if I've ever seen that movie. I'm going to have to check it out.
It is. It's actually pretty good. I mean, you get to see Steve Martin in one time pretend to be a mentally disabled child of Michael Caine. He's got an eye patch on, and he bangs stuff like that. But then that's just a small part. But when they try to out-con each other, it's fantastic. How Michael Caine thinks he's got the upper hand on Steve Martin, and then Steve Martin goes above him, and he thinks he's got the upper hand. Then Michael Caine comes back at him, and it's a bridge, and before you know it, you don't know what the heck's going on. And then it's a killer twist ending to it. But it's a really funny comedy, and it's really, really good. And I highly recommend it. As I said, not my favorite Steve Martin film, but it's one of his better ones.
Woo. Sounds good. All right, my number, what are we on, 11, 12? I'm not sure. I lost track.
12. Well, 12.
All right, so this is much more serious. I'm kind of turning over the page here. This movie was a movie that it was the first of its kind, I want to say, and that was The Accused. And the reason why I say that is because it's a film about a woman who gets raped. It's loosely based on a true story, and just doing anything like that was just not heard of in the 80s and before then. Like films would maybe imply or what have you, but in this movie, they actually filmed the 3-minute long rape scene, which they said traumatized the actors even as they were filming it, because it was just like it had never been done before. It also opened up the dialogue about rape, about violence against women, sexual bullying, what have you. It just like this, it kind of became the stepping stone for, everything that we know and hear of now, which, cut to 30 years later, 2018, it's sort of, shoved down your throat. But back then, this was the very first beginnings of all of this. Jodie Foster plays the main character, Sarah, which she also won the Oscar for. Sarah works, she's a working class girl, she works in a bar, and basically she gets raped with everyone in the bar, all the onlookers, cheering it on instead of stopping it. And her just it happening to her and her realizing that they're all cheering it on. And then the police and help is called after the fact. And then it's a whole, Kelly McGillis plays the lawyer. And what happens is the guys get off on like a misdemeanor and not on the rape charge. And Sarah gets really mad and Kelly McGillis is like, you know what, wait a second, this is wrong. We can't, retry them because of double jeopardy. But what if we go after the onlookers? Because they're, what do they call that when you're...
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Accessories, I guess.
Accessory, yeah, that's the best accessory. Right.
So then the film continues on where, they have to retell what happened, and she tries to get the guys in trouble who were watching and didn't know or didn't bother to, pick up the phone and call 911. So it's a very intense movie. But it was a very important movie, and I think it was a very necessary movie to tell because it really did start to change the way society kind of looked at all of that stuff. Yeah.
It is. It's one of those films that it's hard to watch, and that's one of the reasons why it's not on my list because it's just one of those films it's a very important film. It is. Everything you said is absolutely spot on, and it's a lot worse than that too. I mean, they after the rape happens and she has the whole thing, no one really cares about her. I mean, they think that she deserved it, the way she was dancing, the way she was acting, and the way she was doing stuff, that she deserved it, and that just that bristles me the wrong way, particularly in the current climate of what's going on now in our society right now. But yes, absolutely right. That was 88 was a time where that stuff was swept under the carpet. You don't talk about that. You don't show it. You don't do any of that. You don't talk about it. And it was a really good thing that they brought that to light, so more meaningful discussion can be done about it, and maybe something more can be done. It's like this happened. This really kind of happened, and this is unacceptable. We've got to change this. We got to fix this. And it was awakening. It was almost an awakening to try to get things to get better. And obviously, they really haven't, but at least now things are getting out a little bit more open. But the thing is, though, even though it's getting open, you still have those people who are saying they deserve it. They shouldn't have been doing that. They should. And that's an attitude that needs to change right now. And I have to say there's someone I work with, it's actually a female, posted something on their Facebook page. There was a picture of all the sexy women dressed on the actresses dressed on sexily on the red carpet and stuff like that in these fancy dresses. And it was something along the lines of, why do you think, if you dress like a whatever, why do you think this stuff happens to you or something like that? I was like, oh my God, do you not?
She posted that?
Yeah, you're a female. Wow. Shouldn't you? That's that is the absolute worst thing to say. Yeah. It's basically saying she deserves it because she was dressed sexily. But you can't dress sexily.
When I see those actresses dressed like that, I think to myself, wow, how do they maintain and get those bodies?
Exactly.
I admire it. They work hard to look like that. That's something to aspire to, not to tear down. Wow, that's shocking.
And the reason why is because the person is I hate to say it's kind of uneducated, is a Trumpite, stuff like that. So she believes her president and stuff, blah, 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 whatever. She's a nice person, except I can't read her social media. When she's at work, she's a perfectly fine, fun person, but seeing her, because she doesn't let her beliefs come out at that time, at that point.
Well, at least she knows there's a time and a place, I guess,
Yeah, but still, I mean, it made me Sure. Because she did something else also, is there was no racism wasn't as bad until after President Obama was elected or something like that. I was like, come on, man, seriously, I know. I
can't believe people still say that. That's yeah.
So
I say that. Look, we have a day called Martin Luther King Day, this been a celebrated holiday for how many years now? How do you say that?
But no, it is an important film, and actually, it was kind of in professional career, that's sort of what jumpstarted Jodie Foster's career up again. I mean, not that that's a good movie to do it on, but I mean, it was a way that it brought her back into the zeitgeist. And 91, she gets the role in Silence of the Lambs, and from that point on, she's able to go out, and she's still, to this point, she's still those type of people who fights for these rights, and fights for things that she believes are wrong. And she makes a statement. I think she's lesbian also, so you've got sort of that sort of she's very political. I think some of the things she's been saying recently don't jive with a lot of things that other people believe. She's a staunch defender of her friend Mel Gibson, which, it's your friend. I get it. He's your friend. But, some of the stuff he's been saying is ridiculous.
Yeah,
but still, the fact is she's still strongly political, and that's a good thing. You need to have, and the one thing that drives me absolutely bonkers is when the right keeps saying, "You're a celebrity, shut up, don't say anything." No, yes, they are celebrity, but guess what? They're Americans also. It's their constitutional right.
Reality star.
Yeah, exactly. There's that, but it's also it's their constitutional right to speak out against, because guess what? Yes, they're celebrity, but you know what? They're also American also.
Right.
I know it seems like it's unbelievable. Oh my God, they're a movie star. There's no way. No, they are Americans first and foremost. Do you think they were always a movie star? No, they were not. They were people just like us. They just happened to get lucky and are a celebrity. They have every right to say whatever they want to say politically, just like you do. And yes, Jerry, you're absolutely right. And you're the guys that elected a celebrity as president. So whatever. Got that awesome. So
you're disgusted. What's your number 12, 11, whatever?
I'm actually, it's actually really funny because it's the exact opposite of yours. Yeah. Mine is a raucous,
good Lord,
hilarious, satirical comedy called The Naked Gun. The Naked Gun was did you watch Police Squad when it came out in the 80s, a TV show?
Yeah, here and there, but as soon as Naked Gun came out, like, I knew enough about Police Squad to know that that's exactly what they were spoofing.
Because
you read it, right? With the car?
Yeah, because they were spoofing that from one of the other, was it Streets of San Francisco, or was it one of the other ones?
Where it's like the viewpoint of the car driving down the street.
Yeah, the siren, the police light right there, and
you've got crash it, and
they but yeah, Police Squad was for those who don't know, Police Squad was a 6-episode TV series that came out in the early 80s, like 83, 84, something like that. And I didn't see it when it originally came out, but when Naked Gun took off and became hugely popular, which is it's based on Police Squad, they re-released the 6 episodes like during the summer or something like that, and I watched them, and so I've actually seen the 6 episodes. And then when they did the second one, you see a lot of the same jokes that they used in Police Squad they put in the movie, because not everyone saw Police Squad. So the one particular one is it has Leslie Nielsen shooting, and then the bad guy shooting, and then Leslie Nielsen shooting, and then it pulls back, and they're like 2 inches from each other. That was from the TV show. But Police Squad was done by David Zucker, or one of the other Zucker brothers. But it was one of the crew that did the Airplane, Top Secret spoof movies from the early 80s. It was, as I said, it was based on Police Squad, which was a TV show that they did in the early 80s. So they brought back most of the actors who were in it to come back and portray their characters. And Leslie Nielsen was the main character, Lieutenant Frank Drebin, and he is one of the most clueless, goofiest police officers you've ever seen. And it became one of those parodies of cop films and stuff like that, but it had its own style as well, because not everything was like it. With Airplane, a lot of it was parodies of movies, but at the same time they had their own hilarious comedy bits as well that they created. Naked Gun continued that, so some of the stuff you see, you can say, okay, I know where they got that from, but then there are other times you're like, wow, that's kind of ingenious, and it was like new and created. Like the storyline, and I have to put quotations on that, is the Queen of England is coming to visit the United States, and Police Squad, who is a special, she's coming to California, which is where Police Squad is based. They're a special group of the police department, you know, the cliched, you know, SWAT team or whatever, but they're a police squad. So they're like the best of the best of the best, like that. They're in charge of security for the Queen's visit because there have been threats against her life. And we soon learn that the person who's threatening her life is played by Ricardo Montalban in his Corinthian leather, all his sleaziness type of style. His assistant is played by Priscilla Presley, who was at one time Elvis Presley's wife at one time. She's a sexy blonde, whatever. Well, Frank discovers the plot that's going on, and one of the people he's investigating is Ricardo Montalban's character, because he's in charge of, she's going to sit with him and he's paid money to get her over, whatever. And he falls in love with Priscilla Presley's character and she falls in love with him. And so you do the parody of some of the love stories and then other stuff like that. But that's the basic premise. I mean, it also unfortunately had O.J. Simpson in it as well as a police officer who is still actually one of the funniest scenes of the film, where he busts a drug deal on a ship and he gets shot, and then after he gets shot he starts hitting all the things in the building, like the bear trap, and he puts his hand on the stove and smashes into glass table or falls down, or then he ends up falling into the water. But it's like sight gags and fart jokes and sex jokes and, you know, parody, and it's just fantastic. And it ends in the best. One of the scenes that still makes me laugh all the time is the baseball game, where the Queen of England is visiting, watching them play baseball, and it is one of the last like 15 minutes of the movie. It's like a nonstop laugh fest for me, because it is one of the funniest scenes ever filmed in television. From the garish bloopers, like guys' heads getting knocked off by baseballs or getting attacked by tigers on the base path, to Leslie Nielsen, who's undercover as the umpire doing his little dance moves and stuff like that. It's just, you just have to see it. It's just, it's 88 minutes. It's a breeze. It's a cakewalk. You can watch it in an hour and a half and just, it'll put a smile on your face. So Naked Gun's my number 12.
That's awesome. My number 11 is Young Guns, but yeah, everything that you said. But the fact that sort of Emilio and Charlie and Kiefer pulled away from, like, you know, that whole big group. So you didn't also have like Ali Sheedy and Molly Ringwald and who played Bender. What's his name? I just blanked out.
God.
I just blanked out. I just had it. But he was part of the group too. But the fact that they were able to sort of pull them away and, like you say, create this traditional Western, it was refreshing, I thought. And it really, like you said, showed them in a whole different light. And I just love that movie. I just think it's so good. And everything that you said. Yeah.
It's so great. It is such a great film. And played not for comedy. It's played dramatically, played as a Western should be. And
Jack Palance is in it, which how can you go wrong with him even being in a movie for like 1 minute, you know? For you kids out there, check out some Jack Palance.
Absolutely. Batman, man, is another good one he was in too. And just Jack Nicholson's imitation of Jack Palance and Batman's fantastic also. Anyway, my number 11 is another comedy. I guess you can start seeing, I'm looking at all of them. It's like comedy, not comedy, not comedy. So I was like, I've got all comedies on here for the rest of my list. But my number 11 is a unique, again, 88 seemed to be like the year of actors breaking away from what they're used to being seen as, you know, the Brat Pack and Jodie Foster and Tom Cruise and stuff like that. It's Twins.
That's on my list too.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, to this point in 1988, had never really done comedy. Now, he'd done his little comedic one-liners, he always did, but he was an action star. He was a big, burly action guy. He was probably, in that time, he was at the pinnacle of his action success. I mean, he still had a lot more time to go, but, you know, he had the Terminator under his belt, and he had the Predator and all this other stuff. And so we were used to seeing him be this big burly action star, you know, with the one-liners and the tough guy, and he didn't really have a lot of, you know, women in his movies, but you know, he would be the type of guy. He was the hero, so he'd get the girl in the end in some of the movies. So Twins came out, and everyone was like, "What the hell are we seeing from Arnold Schwarzenegger?" Because he's actually really funny. It's a comedy because the basic premise is there was a scientific group that was trying to create the perfect human being, and the way they did that was they got a bunch of different men who had different, you know, things like an athletic one, a smart one, and all that stuff, and a fantastic woman who had everything. You know, they chose one woman who was the perfect woman for this experiment, and so I'm going to get a little gross, I'm sorry, but they did the little cocktail where they got all the men to, and they
DNA, Dylan.
Yeah, and got into the woman, and you know what happens, and got her pregnant. To make this perfect human being. However, what unexpectedly happens is the egg splits. And what makes it more interesting is that all the good and all the greatness is in one egg, and as is so succinctly put later in the film, all the crap is in the other one. So twins are born. One is humongous baby, which they showed the birth of the baby. You get the humongous baby. You get the smaller baby, and the smaller baby's crying, and then they show a little montage where the smaller baby's like always stealing his stuff and smacking him and stuff like that. So then they realize that we can't have this garbage with us. So we're gonna take the perfect human being that we created, and we're gonna train him and teach him and love him and let him know stuff. And we're gonna let this piece of garbage, you know, handle himself somehow. We'll put him in an orphanage and he'll get taken care of. So flash forward to present day, 1988. The piece of garbage has become Danny DeVito, and Danny DeVito is, you know, he's Danny DeVito in this film. I mean, he's a smarmy guy. He's a lawyer. He works for, you know, he's the mob. He owes money to the mob and stuff like that. He's, you know, he's cheating on his loyal girlfriend and all this stuff. And he runs. And then he discovers there's this big burly guy who's been looking for him. Turns out that Arnold Schwarzenegger is now the good man, is the perfect person. And he's been raised on this island, so he doesn't really know anything about social norms, just what he's read from books and stuff like that. So he wants to find his brother when he discovers that he has a twin brother. And eventually, you know, Danny DeVito doesn't believe it at first because they don't look anything alike and stuff like that. But then the whole story starts spiraling out, and you start to see some of the twin aspects appearing in both of them. And the arrival of Arnold Schwarzenegger changes Danny DeVito's character to make him a bit better, and Danny DeVito's bad side brushes off onto his brother. So they become, you know, a family unit, and it's something they're always looking for. And there's a whole other story about a stolen like motor and other stuff to give that little action stuff, because everybody needs to have a little Arnold action. But what was great about this is Arnold Schwarzenegger in this movie is like the most virginal, kid-like character you've ever seen. He doesn't know anything about anything except for what he's read in books and stuff like that. His body's perfect, and he's weightlifted, and he's got, you know, perfect health and exercise, stuff like that. But he doesn't know how to talk to a woman. He doesn't know how to dance. He doesn't know how to do, you know, good food. He doesn't know about like the pleasures that he was never allowed to savor when he was, you know, raised on this island. So it's just a cute little film that has a little bit of an action edge to it for the fans. That, all right, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, he needs to do something actiony, and yes, he does, but that's not the basis of the film. It's more of the relationship between the brothers, and Danny DeVito and him have such great chemistry. They made another movie together in Junior, which isn't as good, but still, the two of them had this really good chemistry, and it was really good to see them together. So Twins is my number 11.
That's awesome. That's up on my list.
Good.
My number 10, it is about a demonic, possessed, red-headed, gingery little doll named Jackie. Child's play. Child's Play had to make the list. I didn't know where to stick it, so I'm like, all right, let's make it 10, as if we weren't going for 15.
Right.
And we all know, we've talked about Child's Play before. The little dog gets possessed by the soul of what's he, like a serial killer, basically.
Yeah, serial killer. Yeah.
And wants to kind of, wants to find another body to possess to get the hell out of this doll. And the movies, they're hokey, they're funny, they're obviously violent because he's a killer. To watch the little doll kill people is hilarious. And they end up making, what, 3 or 4 of them, I believe.
They've made more than that. Three made it to the movie theaters, and actually 4. I think Bride of Chucky was in the movie theaters. And then they've done like 1 or 2. They did like 1 or 2 other like ones that've been like on Netflix or something like that, or direct to video or something like that.
Chucky, it can't be. I mean, it's a doll. It's
a different friend I work with absolutely loves the Child's Play movies. She loves them and talks.
My mom likes them.
I've never been that big of a fan of the horror genre anyway, so it's not on my list. But that's a good. It's actually it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I saw it.
My face, he goes like this and switches up his face. Hilarious.
And also just get the
ugly ass doll.
Get like also gets the cursing and the evil talking out of the doll.
Yeah.
Beginning of South Park is like, wow, there's a little doll talking about fucking stuff and killing things. Right. It's like, geez, all right, very good. Maybe that's where South Park got it. I don't know, because South Park came out like a few years later. Well, actually, 10 years later. So, all right, my number 10. I touched on my number 10 briefly at the beginning of the show. Filmed in Baltimore. One of my favorite movies of all time, and is the one where, if you've heard about the director, is his most accessible film. It's Hairspray. The original is, to me, much better than the musical update they did. Now, the musical has some nice numbers to it and stuff like that, but the original, you just can't touch the original. And I'm glad, John Waters had his hands in the musical, and he did his thing, and he got the best group to do it, and they did a great job. I did not like the film version of it, and the musical might be one of those that maybe if I saw it in the movie in the theater, like the Hippodrome or something like that, actually see it live on stage, maybe it would. I watched a little bit of the live one they did on NBC like last year or 2 years ago. It was all right.
It was
okay, but it's not the same. But this one is not a musical per se, because the characters don't sing, they dance, but the music is from that era, and it's filled with this 1960s music, and behind it all is a story about racism and being comfortable in your body. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it might seem like a fairy tale thing that but it's a good fairy tale thing where John Waters is the type of person that he doesn't believe that there's anything bad about being different. And the main character is an overweight teenage girl who becomes the most popular girl, on television when she joins one of these dance shows. Now, the dance show that they do in the film is based on an actual dance show they used to do in Baltimore. Okay. For the most part, you could say Hairspray is based on a true story, kind of, but it's not that. The whole story, you throw the whole story out. It's nothing to do with that. But there was a TV show in Baltimore that was filmed in Baltimore in the 1960s. That was just all about dancing. You'd call up and you'd say, I want these people to dance for me to this song, and they would do it. And it was a cool way to have younger kids, dance and be seen and become popular, and a good, healthy type of thing. At the same time, it was also one of the only shows that was trying to desegregate, because unfortunately in the 60s, TV shows like that were segregated because the owners of the stations where they were filmed, which were local, were white supremacists. Not really supremacists, that's a whole different story, but they were ones who were racist against black people, because in the 1960s, I mean, it's Baltimore. We're considered the South, and so we weren't as bad as maybe you would say like a Mississippi or an Arkansas or something like that, but we still had enough in there that there was still sort of that tension. And there's still some of that now in Baltimore, obviously with the riots from a few years ago and stuff like that. But this show actually really did try to desegregate, and the show itself is based on a true thing. But the movie itself is just a wild, crazy, fun, and John Waters is one of those directors that if you just know him from Hairspray, you'll be really surprised if you watch a Pink Flamingos or a Polyester, because you're like, oh my God, is this the same guy who did Hairspray? No, it isn't. Because he is totally bizarro, crazy, insane. And Hairspray was the first film that sort of made him more of a mainstream director. And he's made a few more since then, but Hairspray was the one that got him in the door and out of like the indie spotlight into to an area where, hey, he's kind of like, I hate to say it, but kind of like the Woody Allen. I mean, he's not like Woody Allen, but he's like one of these indie guys who works with a small group of people, sometimes the same people, no real big stars usually, and they love working with him. And if he ever called and said, I have a part for you, they take it in a second. This is how much they love John Waters. And so the film itself is just it's about feeling good in your own skin and dealing with racism, because the main characters they befriend one of the black students in their school whose mother is a famous sort of singer type of person in Baltimore, and there's the black and white couple. I can't think of the name of that right now. Where there's a black and white couple, interracial couple that didn't really happen in the 1960s, or was tried to kept swept under the carpet, because how could a white person be with a black person? That was the attitude in the 1960s. But this shows a really great, sweet interracial couple, and also the white woman's mother, who's absolutely racist, insane, and is one of the funniest scenes that she's trying to find her daughter. So she's walking through one of these poor black neighborhoods, and they know that she's kind of the way she's acting, that she's kind of racist. So they start doing all this like cliched racist stuff. Baby, give me some money. I need some drugs. And then as she's walking by, she's like, get away from me. Get away. They're like cracking up. They're laughing. It's like, look at that white woman. She's so funny. Watch what I'm going to do. Watch what I'm going to do. Because they're messing with her. It's so funny. But it's lots of, it's dance, it's music, and it's a silly, goofy storyline. There's some, bizarre stuff. But when you have a cast that includes Sonny Bono and Rick Ocasek and what is her name? I can't think of her name right now. And Divine, who was a cross-dresser, was John Waters' best friend, and he was always known. He always played like the female role, but this was one of the first films where he actually got to play a male role also. So he played a male role and he played a female role. And you have Jerry Stiller is in it. George Costanza's father. He has a great role. He's actually married to Divine. So that's a fantastic, and he's fantastic in it. Just a typical John Waters cast, and just a lot of fun. But the music, you can snap your fingers to it. It's great music, an interesting dance, and a good take on segregation and racism. It's a great film, and I cannot talk about how great Hairspray is. So it's my number 10 film.
It's a good film. It didn't make my list, but it's a good film. My number 9 is Naked Gun, and I think you pretty much touched upon everything. Funny and zany, and if you just want to have a nice casual afternoon and just watch something that's going to make you laugh and for a couple hours, then throw it on and watch it, and everyone can watch it. I think
I just keep thinking about the baseball game. I keep thinking about that.
Did you sing the anthem in this one or the second one?
It was the national anthem in this one.
Yeah.
And then the montage to "I Love L.A." and he's like vacuuming the home base, doing the dust buster, and then corking the bat, and he's like, "Huh, what's going on?" Which you're not supposed to do. And then just some funny things where you see like 20 people rounding the bases at one time, which is impossible either. It's just fit. And then I also love where you know how in baseball stadiums when you want to get food from the concession person who's walking around, you got to pass it through like 20 people. Right. Well, there's somebody wanted, you know, beer and hot dog and pretzels. So there's a scene where they're passing the food past the queen. So the queen has to pass a beer and a hot dog and a pretzel to this guy down the, and then when they're bringing the queen in, there's the two guys, you know, who, you know, they're empty seats. So we're going to sit in the empty seats. They're these big fat guys with cigarettes and stuff like that. They got their feet up and they're sitting in the box, which is obviously made for the queen. Right. And they have to get pushed out by the ushers before the queen can sit down. I'm like, and then the scene where they have the queen, the cake with the queen's face on it. And the first thing they do is they cut the head off when they're slicing the cake. It's like, God. It's such a funny movie. I guess there are lots of good comedies in 1988, and that's why the majority of my list are them. Here's another good one. This one, again, sort of brought an actor acclaim and got him to be in the spotlight now. It's our friend Kevin Costner, and it's the movie Bull Durham. Did you ever see Bull Durham?
Yeah, it didn't make my list. Yes, Bull Durham.
Yeah. Yeah, another connection is Ron Shelton, who wrote and directed it, was in the Orioles minor league system for a while, and he was basing the Bull Durham story on his time in the Orioles minor league system. I know, but still, it's a cool little sidebar because it's important for me because I'm a Baltimorean, man, you know. But you know, Bull Durham, still not my favorite Kevin Costner movie, believe it or not, or my favorite Kevin Costner baseball movie. Field of Dreams is still my favorite Kevin Costner baseball movie, even though he doesn't play baseball in it really per se, but it's about baseball. But Bull Durham is what pretty much, you know, brought him the big fame. It got him, you know, Field of Dreams and then all the other stuff that spiraled afterwards like that. And, you know, he plays what we call a veteran minor leaguer, a guy who may have, you know, who spent his whole career in the minor leagues for the most part. He's good enough to be in the minors, but he's not good enough to be in the majors. And he's been called up a few times, you know, that's sort of like for injured players and might have played a game or two in the big show. But let's face it, the majority of his career, he's been a minor leaguer. And he's the veteran guy, and he's got his own take on things. And he's a catcher. And he ends up working for the Durham Bulls, which is a real minor league baseball team. And it's his job to bring about this new young stud pitcher played by Tim Robbins. He's a guy that is got the stuff. He's the guy that will, after he does his little quick stint in the minor leagues, will go to the major leagues and will be a huge star. But until then, it's up to Kevin Costner in his catcher's role to settle the kid down. That's the only problem that Tim Robbins' pitcher has, is that he's wild, uncontrollable, but he's got the stuff, man. If you can get him to focus and get him down the ball, he's going to be a Cy Young winner, stuff like that. And Costner knows this. And so he also, he takes it upon himself to do that, but also he takes it upon himself also to sort of bring him down to earth a little bit also. So he and Tim Robbins start competing for the affections of Susan Sarandon, who is the minor league baseball player groupie type of person who's gone to every game, knows her stats. She's a huge baseball fan, but she's also a woman, and she's also had her way with most of the players. And she said baseball's her religion and stuff like that. But so it's in essence, it's a romantic triangle, or that everyone, you know, talks about, a romantic comedy type of triangle that has a baseball edge to it. There's a lot of cool baseball stuff in there. One of the funniest scenes is one of the pitchers needs help, so the whole field comes in and they start talking about it, and one of the players is getting married, and so the pitching coach comes down and says, okay, what's going on? And so they have like 5 different questions for him, and he answers every single one of them. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. Okay, we're done. Let's go play. It's just one of the, it's like, what was it? And we're trying to figure out what a good wedding present is. Candlesticks is good. Candlesticks is good. Yeah. So it's just, it's a fun look at what life is like in the minor leagues. But to be honest, the majority of the film it's a romantic comedy romantic triangle type of thing that sort of happens. So it's a little bit more grown-up adult romance, but still it's there, and it's got baseball at its heat as well. So Bull Durham's my number 9.
My number 8 is Rain Man, and we talked about that. And
anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I love that scene when they're touching heads too. Like that kind of, it's like an unspoken moment. And I think that in any film, when they're able to portray, any kind of emotion without words, is always just like this amazing, quiet, sentimental moment. I love when films do that in general.
It is.
And when they have the right time to do it. Like not all of them get that right, but when they do, it's like, oh, that was awesome. Yeah.
It is, and Dustin Hoffman did deserve the Oscar, so I'm glad he got it for that. My number 8 is kind of a more highbrow comedy, but in essence, it also still has that American flair to it. It is A Fish Called Wanda.
Oh, yeah.
You ever see Fish Called Wanda? Yeah.
Well, you talk about it all the
time. 2 members of Monty Python, John Cleese and Michael Palin, are in it. But then we also get the American contingent of Kevin Kline and Jamie Lee Curtis. It's a comedy that is a little bit, I don't want to say highbrow, but it takes place in England. And with Cleese and Palin involved with it, it's not your typical American comedy, but it made enough money that it was successful and people enjoyed it. In fact, it won Kevin Kline Supporting Actor Award for the Oscars, and well deserved, because Kevin Kline is one of the biggest dicks in the film, and he plays it perfectly to perfection. I still think he should have won for Dave, because I loved his portrayal in Dave as 2 different roles. That's besides the point. Yeah. But Fish Called Wanda is basically about
we need a Dave right now in the
yes,
world.
We really do.
Go ahead.
Absolutely, we really do. We need Kevin Kline to come out there and be Dave, or we need a Trump lookalike to come in and clean up his mess. Yeah. If a Trump lookalike came in and changed and said all the good stuff, like believed in Obama, that might get his side to believe him. Oh, if he's saying it, we should believe it. Maybe that'll work. Anybody out there want to do that? Go ahead. They're not in session right now. I think he even went down to Mar-a-Lago. So why don't you go sneak in the White House? They'll never know. Anyway, Fish Called Wanda is about jewel thieves, American and British, and they steal one of the biggest diamonds in England, and 2 of them get away. Kevin Kline and Jamie Lee Curtis, they get away. The British ones get captured, and they are refusing to reveal who their other people are. And so they have to go looking for the stuff. Meanwhile, Kevin Kline and I think Jamie Lee Curtis, I'm trying to remember because it's been a while since I've seen it. I think there is a witness who witnessed who all 4 of the robbers were, and she's going to be called to the Court of Lords, which is like their version of the court, which John Cleese is a member of. He's one of the lords who is like a judge type of person. And there is a witness who can connect who the bad guys are and the ones who got away, what they look like and stuff like that. And so from their jail cell, the British guy who was the one who created the jewel robbery and hired the Americans asked them to get someone to kill the witness before she can testify. So they get Michael Palin's stuttering character to try to kill her, but it doesn't quite go according to plan. Meanwhile, they also want to try to work on the judge, played by John Cleese, to get him to maybe change his vote on sending up the guy who's in charge of the jewel robbery, sending him up the river, stuff like that. So Jamie Lee Curtis goes in to seduce him, and Kevin Kline goes in to sort of, make sure that she's staying on target and working on it. But Kevin Kline is this off kilter, crazed type of guy who has no patience and thinks he's smart, but he really isn't. And whenever somebody says he's not smart, it drives him absolutely bonkers. think Joe Pesci and Goodfellas, it would say you're a clown, you and stuff like that. He sort of loses it a little bit. So it just becomes this whole big farce thing that's going on is Michael Palin continually tries to kill this woman, but instead he ends up killing like all her animals, and he's like a staunch animal person, so it hurts him every time that he's trying to kill her, but when one of the animals gets in the way for whatever reason, he feels guilty about that. And Kevin Kline's absolutely insane, and Jamie Lee Curtis is doing her best to be very sexy, and she does a really good job of being sexy to try to get John Cleese's attention. And it's as I said, it's a fun film. It's one I probably should look at again because it's been a while, and the thing's a little hazy in my head. But that's the majority of the storyline. So you get it. There's some craziness and some there's quiet.
Sounds solid.
Yep.
All right, my number 7. If you've seen it, then Sheepballs will come to mind. And if you haven't, then you've got to see it to know why I'm saying Sheepballs. And it's a comedy, but it also has some sentimental aspects, and that is Funny Farm with Chevy Chase and who plays his wife. Andy, is that it? I didn't write it down. Who plays his wife? Anyway, he plays Andy Farmer, and he's a New York sports writer. And he's always had this dream of writing a novel. But, you know, the chaos of New York City, what have you, they decide to go move to the country. They move to this small little town in Vermont, and they think, oh, this is going to be awesome, him and his wife, and, you know, all the small town living, the country living. But turns out people don't like them at all. They can't jive with them. They can't stand all the decisions that they make. They don't like anything about it. So that, along with having marital troubles, the tension of like, oh my God, we're in the country, like we're getting bored, and all these weird unexpected bills that get attached to the house, they decide they're going to get divorced. So they're going to have to sell the house and put it on the market. But the townsfolk are so mean to them, they're like, we're never going to sell this place. So they tell them, okay, we will give your city $15,000 and give each of you $50 cash, which in the 80s is a nice chunk of change, if you play nice small town for us when prospective buyers come to look at the house. So the town's like, yeah, sure, we'll do this. All the locals go in on it. But they do such a great job that it almost becomes like a Norman Rockwell painting where it's like this perfect country world. So then what comes to happen is Andy and Elizabeth, his wife, realize, wow, this is what we pictured when we pictured small town. And I just keep thinking of like the whole Christmas scene.
That's what I've been thinking the whole time you've been talking. Yeah.
Like this absolute perfect Christmas with like the carolers and cue this and cue that because they've got these, you know, prospective buyers. But then they realize we don't want to sell anymore because this is what we wanted. This is the town that we wanted. Then the town gets mad at them again for not wanting to sell. But it just turns out everything works out at the end. But it is a super cute movie and one that you really have to see the whole city life versus country life and everything that comes along with it. And it's so well done. And, of course, Chevy Chase is Chevy Chase. He knows how to play his characters to a T. So that's my number 7.
You know, when you were describing it, it just I kept getting flashes of the whole movie, and the more and more I think about it, it should have been on my list. It isn't, and I keep getting all the flashes of the postman who speeds by their house every day, and then when they're doing the Norman Rockwell thing, he comes to the door, and Chevy Chase is so he wants to see what this guy looks like. He's never seen him before. There's the fishing competition. And then the other aspect is one of the reasons why they had their marital troubles is because he can't write his book. It's not good.
Yeah.
It's terrible. But she, meanwhile, is writing a series of children's books that she's been influenced by. I think it was the squirrels, right? Squirrels.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Like that, ducks or something like that. So she writes this children's book about these little animals and the stuff that they do, and it becomes successful. And it just the vision of how it ends with, you know, everything, and after they decide they're going to stay and they announce it to everybody, they throw the snowball at them and stuff like that. It is. I forgot how funny it was. It was one of those films I watched all the time when it was like on HBO or something, whenever it came on. And I actually own it. I have it on my shelf back there. I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna blow your mind and make you roll your eyes at the same time.
Oh boy! Sarah
Michelle Gellar's in it.
Oh!
She's a little young. It's like one of her, it's like one of the, I just saw it when I've seen her list of films she's done. Funny Farm is
yeah,
up
but
there.
Did
It's
you
like
realize it was her at the time?
Yeah,
she was little, right?
She was like little. She was like, she's like one of the little girls, like 5 years old, 6 years old, something like that. So I didn't even realize it was her till I was like reading her bio on Wikipedia, and I saw her film list is like Funny Farm. She was in that, and then it's like Darla's name. Was like, what the fuck is a Darla in Funny Farm? I don't remember. So
pop it in and watch it.
I'll have to. Yeah, I will have to do that. But no, when the whole time you were talking, I was picturing the Christmas Norman Rockwell picture, them skating. And there's that one shot, I think, where it's almost like a Norman Rockwell painting while they're skating on the frozen pond and they've got the horse-drawn carriage going through the town. They're all lit up with Christmas lights. And like, isn't it the couple, like a yuppie couple who are buying it, like a young couple that are moving, like their upper 20s, maybe low 30s, who are coming up there. And it's like the guy's got the black hair and it's like, oh, he's kind of tall. It's like, this is wonderful, type of, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot how I need to put that in again, because when I was going through the list, it made I had two columns. I had the columns of the ones that I knew was going to be on my list, and then I had the columns of all the other ones that, well, maybe if I need to move some out. Funny Farm was on that side, but it's been a while since you started describing more and more. It just literally, my memories just flash back, and I just remember seeing just the the drunk postman running, screaming like that. Yeah, and it's a Chevy Chase being Chevy Chase, absolutely. So it's almost like Clark Griswold owns a farm, not quite as clumsy and not quite that way. He's a bit more bitter, but not
family oriented, but yeah.
That's the fish hook in the guy's head or something like that. He's like, clack, clack. Oh, wonderful. My number 7, which may or may not be higher up on the list, I think it might be higher up on your list, is again another film that sort of brought an actor back into people's minds, even though he had a bit of a problem from '89 to like '92. It's Big. Tom Hanks, Jarrett Rushton, who's the woman? Is it Elizabeth Perkins? Yes, right. And John Hurd, the guy who played the dad in Home Alone, was the bad guy, as well. And directed by Penny Marshall. Big is back in the '80s, one of the biggest movie genres in the '80s was the body switching movies, where you'd have the child switching bodies with their parents. So like you could write it. Okay, the daughter and the mother hate each other for whatever reason. The daughter's a teenager, she's going all angsty and stuff like that. The mother's overworked, she thinks her daughter is a slut, stuff like that. And they don't understand each other, so they have this big war. And then all of a sudden something magical happens, and the mother's soul is in the daughter, and the daughter's soul is in the mother. So then, the mother's like, oh, I'm young again. I can do everything I wanted to do and break the rules and go crazy. And the daughter who's in the mother is like, now I can drink and smoke and do whatever I want also. And then they realize that, I kind of like being an adult. I kind of like being a kid. There's too much responsibility. So they had to try to figure out a way to get them back. Well, Big decided to change that up a little bit. Instead of him switching bodies with a grown-up, the character that Tom Hanks ends up playing is a young boy who makes a wish on a cursed machine, at a fair. And he wishes he could be big, meaning, he's smaller than usual kids. His best friend's taller than him, is much cooler than him, stuff like that. He's got the Jones for this one girl who only likes older boys and stuff like that. So he makes this wish. And then he wakes up the next morning and he's Tom Hanks. So he didn't go into somebody else's body. This is basically this kid as a grown-up. You think 13 going on 30, but it was first. Big before 30 going on 30. So now he's freaked out because he's still got the kid's mind in the body of Tom Hanks. His mother, I think, is played by a famous actress also. Famous New York actress. Mercedes Rule, maybe? I think Mercedes Rule was up there. She's freaking out because she thinks this guy kidnapped her son.
Right.
She doesn't know what's going on. And even though he keeps saying, I'm your son, she's freaking out. There's no way possible this could happen. So he ends up running away, and the only person he can talk to is his best friend, who is in high school with him. And his best friend believes him. At first doesn't, but then he does a little hand sign and things that only they would know. And so the best friend is his best friend, so he's going to believe his friend. So they say, what am I going to do? And then they discover, okay, I made this wish. We got to find where this thing is. So they have to do some research. And then until then, Tom Hanks, go to New York, because they live like in New Jersey or outskirts of New York or something like that. Go to New York, find a job, find a place to live, and I'll be over to see you, and we'll try to figure out this thing and get you back to normal. So Tom Hanks discovers a job. He works at a toy company. Mm-hmm. And first thing he does, inventory stuff and types things in the computer. And he's got the always annoying John Lovitz plays his annoying next door cubicle guy who tries to talk his way through. This is how you survive in our office. You can't be too fast, and if you want to score with someone, hit on that chick and stuff like that. He's like playing John Lovitz. John Lovitz playing John Lovitz for the most part. Mm-hmm. But his wide-eyed, being a kid, he ends up going to the toy store in New York. Yes. FAO Schwartz. Yes, FAO Schwartz. And he runs into Robert Loggia, who plays the owner of the toy company he's working at. And he's a kid, so he's playing with all the toys. And Robert Loggia, being the toy company owner, goes and says, I like to see what my people want so I can be a better businessman, stuff like that. He becomes, he likes this guy who works for him, and then ends up elevating him to a position of like assistant manager of production or something like that to test the toys, which pisses off John Hurt's character, who wanted a position also, and also made Elizabeth Perkins sort of, this guy might be kind of interesting. So then as he starts getting successful, Elizabeth Perkins' character starts getting a little interested in him in a romantic way. But this is like a 13, 14-year-old boy. He doesn't know what the heck's going on. And so he's trying to figure out stuff like that. And then meanwhile, they're still searching for the machine. And of course, things happen as, he begins to keep being a grown-up. He starts acting more and more like the grown-up, saying, he's starting to grow up a little bit ahead of time. And his best friend doesn't like that, so they have a little fight, and they sort of separate. But then Tom Hanks' world crashes down around him, and so the last thing he needs to do is he's got to figure out what to do. So he makes friends with his friend again. They find out where the machine is. He makes the wish, and all is back to normal. So it's a fun little film.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
My number 5 is
six.
Oh, 6? Oh, so 6. You know why I skipped? Because it's twins.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And you pretty much covered. We had a lot of the same movies, yeah, but you pretty much covered everything. I loved Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito's chemistry. I thought that they were terrific together in this, and they really played well off each other. And like you said, it really got to open up Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he either was like Mr. One-Liner or barely any lines. And in this one, he actually had to not only speak his lines, but emote. And he did a fantastic job. Like, he really showed us a side of himself that people really didn't think was there. Because most action stars, they just want to, fight and jump and blow things up and do their actiony scenes. They don't want to have to memorize paragraph and paragraphs worth of dialogue.
Or build a character, like
right.
The character did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My number 6 actually is a action type of hero. One of the best action movies of all time, and is in the middle of a major controversy. Is it a Christmas movie or not? Is Die Hard. Die Hard is 1980.
I've never seen Die Hard.
You never saw Die Hard?
Even Jim was like, how could you never see? I've never seen it.
I think you should. I think you'd like it.
30 years later.
30 years later, but it's still, it's and to quell everything, I believe, yes, it is a Christmas movie.
That's what people say. I haven't seen it, so I can't offer my opinion yet. I will let you know.
I definitely think you should check it out. And the sequels aren't as bad as people make it out to be. The second one basically is a lazy rewrite of the first one, but it takes place in an airport instead. There's some cooler action sequences and some more interesting characters. The third one's really kind of different, where he teams up with Samuel L. Jackson, and they end up having to go through instead of just being set in one location. Whereas in Die Hard, it's in the Nakatomi building, Die Hard 2 is the airport. This one is all through the city of New York, where they're trying to find these bombs that could blow up and kill people while they're being. So it's a different take on the Die Hard story, but it continues the character. Bruce Willis plays John McClane. He is a New York police officer. His wife is played by Connie something. It's not Celica, but it's I forget her name right now. But she is estranged from her husband. He's, when you're married to a police officer, it's kind of rough from what I've heard, because they're always on duty and you might have plans, and then he's got to go investigate a murder or something. And so he might be gone for days on end or hours on end. And plus, you're always worried if he's going to survive, due to the crime and maybe getting killed by somebody. So I can understand the strain of a marriage to a police officer. So she moves out to California to get a job at a big time business place in a building called the Nakatomi building. And they're estranged. They're not divorced, but they're estranged. And so, they have 2 kids together, and she, I think, has custody of the kids. So they went with her to Los Angeles. So it takes place on Christmas Eve. She invites him out for Christmas Eve, see the kids, spend Christmas with us. Maybe we can reconcile, we can talk or whatever, because there's still love there, but it's still, when you're estranged, it's kind of a thin line about what you can do. So he flies out, gets a limo, and drives to the Nakatomi Plaza, and meets up with his wife. And things are still a little rough. The kids are at home with their nanny or whatever. So it's a Christmas party. So it's Christmas Eve. They're having a Christmas party at this business place. Well, in the middle of the party, Bruce Willis doesn't want to go to the party because it's not his people. He wants to just sort of relax and hang out on the side. And he and his wife are having a conversation when all of a sudden they hear gunfire. Apparently, a band of criminals have come in to take hostages in the building. The leader of it is played by Alan Rickman, who plays Hans Gruber, who is one of the greatest villains of all time. It's Alan Rickman, so you can't go wrong with Alan Rickman at all. This is like the first film that really brought him into American audiences' eyes. He was a big British actor for the longest time, but this film cemented how great Alan Rickman is. And so he and his band of thieves and stuff, they take over the building. And they have a whole convoluted plan, which I'm not going to go into detail with, because that's part of the fun, discovering that it's not exactly what you think it is, which is kind of cool what they're doing. But Bruce Willis, who's a police officer, is roaming the building, and they don't know about him. So he uses his cop instincts to try to quell this uprising. He contacts the Los Angeles Police Department, and he has a liaison on the outside played by Reginald Johnson, who was in Family Matters. Yeah. And he played a cop in that one. So basically you could say that Family Matters is this character's family life, basically, you could say. And and it's good because, Bruce Willis is basically by himself through most of the movie, so he needs somebody to communicate with. So they bring in Reginald Johnson so the characters can have conversations, stuff like that. Meanwhile, his wife is trying to quell things in her own way also. So the criminals soon discover that there is some rogue element in the building, and they need to hunt it down and kill it because he's taking out their guys and taking their guns and stuff like that. So after that, it becomes like this big cat and mouse game where, Bruce Willis, attacks and goes back, and then they attack. And what's great about the film is that, with most action films, the character, the hero, like the Schwarzenegger, as we talked about, let's just say Schwarzenegger because he was in so many of them, nothing happens to them. I mean, they might get beat up a little bit, but they could get blown up, they could get shot at, but they come out, they're unscathed, they're wiping off, stuff like that. This is where Die Hard is a different action film. Shit happens to Bruce Willis, and it makes perfect sense. All you need to know is this is going to make you cringe a little bit. he is running around the building in bare feet. There's a reason why he's doing it. He's got nothing but bare feet. Once Alan Rickman's character, who actually runs into him during the movie in the upper in the upper levels of the building, discovers he is barefooted, he tells his minion to shoot the glass.
Oh yeah.
And the only way for Bruce Willis to cross the floor to escape the bad guys is to walk on broken glass in bare feet. And you see him, you see the glass, and there's a scene where he's pulling glass out of his feet and he's whimpering and crying because it hurts. You've ever had multiple pieces of glass in your feet? These fucking things are like slithers, you know. Yeah, and he's got hundreds of them in there. So he's like, and you can you can also tell he's starting to get exhausted because he's running on adrenaline, but adrenaline's going to kick out on you eventually. So he's exhausted. He's doing all this stuff. He's going up and down steps. He's doing all things. He's shooting things. He's fighting bad guys. He's getting beat up. He's beating people up, and it's showing. And that's the thing, is you don't see that in action films. The action stars never tire, it seems like. Bruce Willis does, and he's a real. What makes Die Hard one of the best action films is that it actually shows consequences of all the stuff that is happening. So, great movie, highly recommended. And yes, it is a Christmas movie. I'm sorry. It takes place on Christmas Eve. There's all kinds of Christmassy influences and stuff like that. Christmas music. One of the best lines is after Bruce Willis kills one of the bad guys, he puts him in the elevator and takes it back down to where all the bad guys are. And then the elevator opens up. The dead guy is tied to a chair, and written in blood is, "Ho, ho, ho, now I have a machine gun." It's so great because he's taunting the bad guys also, which is fantastic.
Where's Samuel L. when you need him? That way he can be Merry Christmas, motherfuckers.
Exactly. There you go. But yeah, so just Bruce Willis is really good in this, but Alan Rickman, as always, steals the show, and he's fantastic. And Die Hard it is a Christmas movie. I don't care what you say. That's my number 6. Number 5.
My number 5 is Midnight Run with Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin. So Robert De Niro plays a bounty hunter named Jack Walsh, and he has to take this criminal named the Duke, played by Charles Grodin, and bring him to LA. And basically the whole movie takes place with them on this adventure to get him there, but the Duke will do things to try to escape him or outsmart him. They can't stand each other. It's this total love-hate caper. It's like one of my favorite movies. I've seen it so many times. But yeah, it's terrific. And then at the end, there's a funny, well, not a funny twist, but it's an appropriate twist because the characters evolve, but you're evolving with them, and then you start to root for them without ruining, what happens at the end. But it's such a great movie. I love it.
It's higher up on my list, absolutely. So it is, and I'll tell you why it's where it is at. Also, not only because of the film, but there's also kind of a personal.
Are you bounty hunter? Are you bounty hunter?
Just you wait. You got a couple more to go before you find out what I'm going to say.
In Baltimore.
No, actually, it is New York too. So Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Oh, good.
Number 5 is a Christmas movie also. It's Scrooged. I absolutely adore Scrooge.
That's high on your list for you because you love that movie. I thought it'd be much higher.
Well, the 4 in front of it, you'll know why. But Scrooge, it deserved to be in my top 5 because it is one of my absolute favorite movies. We talked about this. We talked about this on our Christmas show we did a few years ago. Bill Murray just does a phenomenal job in this film. The whole cast is amazing, and it's a kind of a different take on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol because everybody does a version of a Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, and this is more of a modern update, while at the same time is sort of an in-joke because he's a TV executive producing a TV movie about A Christmas Carol. So the same thing is happening. It's mirroring what's happening. The TV show, which is based on the book and has all the old-timey Scrooge stuff, is basically the same stuff's happening to Bill Murray's Frank Cross going at the same time. But wonderful Danny Elfman score. Richard Donner did a great job directing it. Wonderful cast. And Bill Murray just is amazing in this film. One of my favorite all-time Bill Murray roles. A lot of people think that he hams it up near the end, but and I talked about that. His last scene, the last like 10 minutes of the movie, is basically one long monologue about how he's changed due to the appearances of the three ghosts. And it is one of the absolute makes you believe about, people can change. Right. And he's so earnest and so truthful about it and so emotional about it. And Bill Murray just kills it in the film. And we've already talked about it a million times, but Scrooge is my number 5.
Yeah. My number 4, this is another one that this had never really been done before. It's funny how 1988 seemed to be like breakthrough for a lot of these things. It's the story isn't anything fantastic. It's a typical whodunit. It's a throwback to the old detective stories, and it is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But what makes this so unique is that they married live action with animation, and this is before CGI and what have you, and all the effects that they can do now, which to put live action and animation together is nothing now. But back then, it wasn't really yet heard of or done very minimally. So the filmmakers had to really become very clever and use all kinds of tricks to, let it be done. They even had a documentary to show you how they, were able to achieve some of those tricks. But basically, it's Private Eye Eddie Valiant. It's Bob Hoskins, who's terrific. Gets hired by a cartoon producer to investigate this adultery scandal involving Jessica Rabbit, who's this very sex pot rabbit cartoon. And she's the character, she's the wife of Maroon's biggest star, Roger Rabbit. So there is a death and Roger Rabbit gets framed. So basically, the real life detective has to go into the cartoon world to help this famous Roger Rabbit cartoon get off the hook.
It's higher on my list also. What's interesting about the film is, my God, Christopher Lloyd was fantastic as the bad guy. Oh my God, he had just played in '85 one of the greatest fun teddy bear-esque Dr. Emmett Brown's in Back to the Future. And then he comes in and plays this absolutely psychotic character who he just looks like he's bald and darks and just has, but you can hear the Christopher Lloyd voice. It's in there, it's him, but it's not him. He's just so great about that. The interesting about that is my daughter, we had our daddy-daughter weekend last weekend because Dawn and Noah were camping. So we did a movie marathon, and the last movie we watched was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. She'd never seen it before. And yeah, Robert Zemeckis, brilliant. I've always thought him to be one of the best directors of our time. And it was, you nailed it on the head. It had never been done before. And even if it had, it was so awful when I think that
I can think of this more like Mary Poppins when they jump in the painting. But that's or Uncle Remus, remember, with singing.
And Song of the South, and then there was also Incredible Mr. Limpet, and then there were some other ones. But as I said, these were just so Pete's Dragon's another one. But these were just, you could tell it wasn't great. Like Incredible Mr. Limpet was mostly animated because it took place in the underwater world, and then every once in a while he might pop up and talk. But no, this was actual interaction.
Yeah.
People who shaking hands and talking and hugging and kissing and doing all kinds of stuff. Cartoons, animated picture on the screen, actually interacting with a live action character. It had never been done this way before. And it is a groundbreaking film, and that's why it's higher on my list, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. My number 4 is one I think we've discussed before because it has one of our favorite mutual directors, Tim Burton's Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Don't say the B word.
You're in trouble.
We talked about this on our Tim Burton show. We did a Tim Burton show last year, 2 years ago, something like that, where we did our best. Yeah, we did our best, the best Tim Burton movies, and I'll just go cover it real quick. Beetlejuice is a fantastic film. Alec Baldwin, Gina Davis, Michael Keaton, Jeffrey Jones, Glenn Shaddix, Catherine O'Hara. Winona, yeah, can't forget Winona. Winona's actually Noelle's favorite character. She likes Lydia. I got her on that, and I got her on Nightmare Before Christmas. She loves Nightmare Before Christmas also. So what's that?
Has she seen Stranger Things?
Yes, she saw the first season. We're waiting on letting her watch the second season because Dawn and I have only watched the first 2 episodes, so we're going to watch the whole second season with her from the beginning. But yes, she just saw Stranger Things. She loves Stranger Things.
Yeah. My 11-year-old too. He's in love with Millie. He loves 11. And what was hilarious was he said to me, "You kind of look like what's Winona Ryder's character's name in Stranger
Joyce. Joyce.
He's like, "Mommy, you kind of look like Joyce," and it made me laugh because back when Beetlejuice came out, my little tiny cousin then was like, "You look like Lydia," and I just think that's so funny that like 30 years later, I mean, I don't look like Winona Ryder, but the fact that a little cousin and then now my little son see something, it was very surreal.
No,
that's hilarious, you know.
It's your hair. It's your hair, I think.
Maybe. It's very funny that they both said that, and it was her at 2 different stages in her life. Yeah.
It is. That is amazing. That is really cool. But yeah, I mean, we discussed already. I love Michael Keaton. I think he is also another underrated actor. I think he deserves more accolades than he gets. And I will be, and I talked about this, I will be the first person to admit I did not want him to play Batman. I was one of those comic book guys that when he was announced, I wrote the letter saying I don't think he should play Batman because I was a big dork. Yes, I know. And then it came out, and I was like, you know what? He wasn't so bad after all. You know, he really wasn't so bad. Yeah. So but Beetlejuice is my number 4. I love early Tim Burton for the most part. He's one of my faves. And another memory, I saw with my stepmom, my first stepmom I told you about earlier, with The Working Girl and Scrooged. I saw, it was one of the things where it was just me and her. My dad was doing something, so just me and her. We went to see Beetlejuice at the movie theater, so that was cool. So that was my number 4.
My number 3. What I love about number 3, it's a cute, unique movie. But what you have to understand from 1988, you touched upon it earlier, was that Eddie Murphy was such a huge, comedic actor, and he was breaking into film and what have you. But he was paired up in this movie with Arsenio Hall, which at the time he was a very popular. It was a late night talk show, variety show, because he would have bands and what have you on it. But to take these 2 really big guys and put them together in a movie, that alone sold everybody. But then on top of it, Coming to America, it's just fantastic. I mean, so we know he's Prince Akeem. He's a prince from a wealthy African country. He doesn't really want to marry the wives that they sort of pick out for him. He's like, I want to go to America. And his best friend, Demi, is going to go with him because his father's trying to talk some sense to him. Go ahead, let him get out of his system, make him go to America. And it's cute because he looks at a map and he finds Queens, New York. It figures Queens would be a perfect place for him to find his queen because he's a king. And it's a really just cute coming of age film, really, when you think about it, because he's lived this sheltered prince life, and now here he is right smack in Queens, working at a fast food place and getting to know people in society and all the misunderstandings and what have you. And I'm not going to get totally into it because it's Coming to America. It's a really great film. It's my number 3.
And it's lower on my list also, so you can pretty much kind of figure out what my bottom 3 are. Yeah. But what I need to also point out is you point out Arsenio and Eddie, but let's throw in James Earl Jones as the dad. You've got one of Samuel L. Jackson's first appearances.
Yes,
he plays the burglar, the guy who's trying to take over the McDowell's restaurant.
With
He's, and his little girl is like, "What you looking at?" And then Eddie Murphy's like, "Please refrain from speaking like that." He's like, "Fuck you," and that's when Eddie Murphy kicks his ass. You get John Amos, you get Madge Sinclair, who's a fantastic actress. Hell, you even want to throw Louis Anderson in there as well. You amazing cast, and on top of that, you get Eddie and Arsenio doing what they do best, which is playing multiple roles. And they play multiple roles, and they kill in all of them. It's every single one they do is just It's their own character, and it's just amazing, and how good they are and how different they are from the characters they're playing in Coming to America. Absolutely. That's why it's higher on my list. It's fantastic. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. My number three, you touched on already, Midnight Run.
Yeah.
I love that movie. It also breaks the record for the amount of fucks are in a movie, I think.
Oh, really?
Because I don't know if it literally does, but if you ever, every other word in that movie is the F word. And
we saw it as kids too. I guess my parents were like, whatever. Just don't repeat that to your ear.
But my personal story I want to tell you about was my dad and I. My dad was, I mean, my dad gave me enough love and stuff like that. I'm not someone who's craving daddy's attention, stuff like that. But one of the things that we had in common besides baseball and sports was we like movies. And every once in a while, it would just be me and him. We'd sit down, we'd watch some movies here and there. And one of them was Midnight Run, which is me and him. First time I ever saw it was with my dad. We watched it at home. I think it was either, it might not necessarily have been in 1988, but it was on video or cable or wherever it was. But we sat down, just two of us, my dad and I, and we watched the movie, and we both enjoyed it. And, had little discussions about it and talked about it and made jokes, that we might only get, lines from the film and stuff like that. So it's just a nice little thing about that. But if you sweep that out of the way, the movie itself is just an outstanding film with De Niro and Grodin as the best roles, but then you get John Ashton in there, who plays the other bounty hunter who's trying to hunt him down. You've got God, I forget his name, the guy from The Matrix, and Joe Pantoliano plays the bail bondsman guy. He's the smarmy guy. You get him like that, and you get a whole bunch of great character actors. Yaphet Kotto's in it, always wearing the sunglasses. There's the joke going on about his sunglasses, like De Niro always wants to steal them or something like that, or he does always steal Yaphet Kotto's sunglasses, then leaves them after he gets away from them at a spot, stuff like that. And just and then the bad guy, the gray-haired, mustache guy who was a cop, and in real life, and then he became an actor. He's in Get Shorty, and he just died recently too. Oh God, he was so great. Also, he's great at playing these like mafia bad guys, and he's so smarmy and so great. Martin Brest directed it. Now, Martin Brest directed Beverly Hills Cop in 1985-ish, I guess, 84, 85. So he uses sort of the same kinetic sort of style that he used in Beverly Hills Cop to make Midnight Run. And it's a film has one of those ticking clock things. You need to get to California by midnight, or else something else is going to happen. You got the mafia and the FBI and local police after you, and that's what it was. The ongoing joke was Yaphet Kotto's Alonzo Mosley FBI, how they always pretended to be him because De Niro stole his FBI badge.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And so whenever they went to a restaurant or they went to a grocery store and they needed to get food or get fed because they didn't have any money on them, they would pretend he would flash as Alonzo Mosley, FBI. De Niro did it a couple times, and then Grodin did it once when he was getting like tickets to airplane or something like that. I forget what it was, but not airplane because he was afraid of flying, but it was like a train or a car or something he was renting, and he said, "I'm Alonzo Mosley." That was that's one of the ongoing jokes of the film, is that they pretend to be Yaphet Kotto's FBI agent, and I just love it when they're one step behind. So when they go to this one place and they're interviewing the guys, like, yeah, he said he was Alonzo Mosley, FBI, and it goes back to Yaphet Kotto. He's got this look on his face, like, really, seriously. So I love this movie, and I haven't seen it in a while. Dawn hasn't seen it yet. I keep saying you got to see this movie. I think you're really gonna like it. And I own it, so maybe this year I'll get her to see it. And I haven't seen it in a while either. But I love this movie. I really do. That's why it's my number 3.
All right, my number 2 is Big, and all I'll add to that is just how exceptional Tom Hanks is as an actor. Any role you give him, anything, he just embraces it, and he just blows it out of the water. He makes you think he's a 12-year-old boy. I mean, it's amazing. It's fantastic. That's what I enjoy most about him. He's known to be like a good guy in real life. He's the type of guy you want to root for him. You want him to be happy. You want him to be successful. and he is, and he does, and it makes everybody feel good straight across the board.
And you know, he had a damn good idea too. The idea that he came up with when he's in the toy company with the Choose Your Own Adventure comic.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. And John Hurt had to go in and ruin it for us all. We could have had our Choose Your Own Adventure comic. But it's big as, I mean, there's not much more you can say about it. It was great. And it looked like that was going to be a film that was finally going to bring Tom Hanks back to something, because he had a good early career. Then he sort of stalled a little bit. Big came out, did really good. They started getting all these other roles that weren't doing anything for him. And that ended with that disaster that was Bonfire of the Vanities. And then who comes to his rescue again? Penny Marshall. Penny Marshall cast him as in a supporting role in League of Their Own, and that was what pushed him where he is now. So, working with him in '88 on Big, and she remembered him, said, he'd be perfect for this role. It's a supporting role, and Tom was like, I'll take it, because he was having a rough time. So, he took it, he killed that, and then from that point on, he got Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, and the rest is history. We know what's going on with that. And yeah, he's still a good guy. Real quick, just a side, have you seen The Post yet?
Not yet. Have you?
No, I haven't. I kind of want to, because I've always wanted to see Tom and Meryl together, because they've never worked together before. Yeah. And plus, you throw Spielberg in there as well, and it's a newspaper movie. Absolutely, that's one of the ones. My number two, you also just talked about, also Coming to America. Just what can you say? Absolutely,
yeah.
It is one of the funniest movies of all time. It is a great, and it's also fun to see Eddie different also, because his Prince Akeem is once again sort of that sweet, nice type of character. And you're used to seeing him being the wisecracking, Axel Foley. Yeah, Axel Foley, and he's not. But he gets to do that in some of the other roles he does. He gets to break off. He does the barber, who loves Joe Louis, and then he also did the one, the sexual chocolate, the musician. That's fantastic. And then you get Arsenio as the other barber. And then the priest. Oh, and then Eddie was the white Jewish guy, which you gotta love that also. And then you've got Arsenio as the horrible date, that one woman that would tear you apart, and your friend too. And then that one too. And then he played the preacher, who was pretty funny also. And there's probably a couple other roles I'm missing.
They had them read the script, and then they were like, "Yeah, I want to be that one. I want to be that one. I want to be that one." Like, they must just giving them free reign. So whatever you want to do, man.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but there's also a Trading Places Easter egg in there. Do you remember when Akeem's on his date for the first time with the girl, and they're walking along the waterfront to the restaurant, and he gives the money that Arsenio Hall's character, had gotten from Zamunda, and it was like $1 million or whatever, and he took it and he gives it to the homeless people, and then he walks away. The homeless people are the two old guys from Trading Places. Yeah, Denholm Elliott and Amici, Don Amici, and it's their roles, because he's like, Mortimer, I'm not talking to you, Reginald, whatever their characters was, and they show the money, and it's like, we're back, and you hear their theme playing. Because John Landis, who directed Coming to America, also directed Trading Places. So it's a quick cameo, and it's really funny, and most people might not have gotten it, but he actually goes back to focus on it, so you actually will kind of get it, and you recognize, if you'd seen Trading Places, you'd be like, oh, I know who they are. But then if you hadn't, you'd be like, why is he saying on these guys? What?
You heard about these two homeless guys? Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah, it's a neat little thing. So Coming to America, I mean, I can't really say anything more. You said it all. It's a fantastic movie. And as I said, just a great cast in general. And also a pretty much all black cast for the most part, which is in '88 also was kind of unheard of also. It wasn't, thought, because again, the movie industry is getting better, but back then, you always need to have at least one white guy or the action star, and the white guy and the black guy teamed up together or whatever. But this was basically almost an all black cast. I mean, it was, I think, for the most part. I mean, there was Eddie's Jewish white guy, and then there was the one white taxi cab driver, and that was really about all the. And then Louis Anderson's character; those were really the only white people who had a presence in the film, and it wasn't even that big of a deal. So that was kind of cool to see that. Yes. And Eric LaSalle, young Eric LaSalle from ER was in it also. He played the Afro curl guy. So
that's funny. Oh my god.
Soul Glow, that's what it is. Soul Glow. Yeah. So just a phenomenal cast in general, and just a fun film. All right, so here's the thing. Go on. What's your number one movie of 1988?
Beetlejuice. Come on now.
Should have thought. Yeah.
Absolutely nothing to say about it because it's Beetlejuice. Yeah.
It's Beetlejuice. That's all you need to say. It's Beetlejuice.
Love that.
It's Beetlejuice.
Boom. It was very, very unique, right? Even it was unique for 1988. It was a fun concept, and they played all the different types of ghosts and afterlife type characters and what have you. Yeah, that's cool.
It was great.
Creative.
Yeah, and then it was just fantastic. I loved it. I mean, it was number 4, but maybe in retrospect, maybe I should have made number 3. But I said I just love my Midnight Run. I love my Coming to America. So
all these are at the end here strong.
Yeah, my number 1, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Just because it was such a groundbreaking film. Mm-hmm. And just I saw it like 2 times in the movie theater, and then I remember this distinctly. Also, we went on a vacation. I think it was out to like Seattle or something like that, and our apartment. Well, it was like late night, and we had just gotten in. We were just our hotel room. We turned it on, and they had like the the pay-per-view type of thing. Who Framed Roger Rabbit was on there, so we paid for that, and we watched that in the hotel room. So, and I'm so happy that I was able to get my daughter to experience that. She really liked it. I think she likes Beetlejuice better, so she probably would like your list better. But she still enjoyed Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And then another fun thing to do is to see all the Easter eggs in that one also, because Robert Zemeckis threw a ton of them in there. And the fact that you've never ever seen Daffy and Donald Duck together, or Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse together until this movie. You have Disney characters and Warner Brothers characters, walking and playing and doing stuff hand in hand and doing their own stuff. And it's just, and living like that. They do this all the time, that they're always hanging out together. And, Eddie Valiant hanging out with Yosemite Sam and Goofy and all these other characters that he helped when he was, when he had the Toontown District, when he was the police officer there. And, and even the backstory about his brother getting killed by a Toon was just devastating. And you can understand why he has such hatred for Toons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't say enough about Bob Hoskins. Oh my God.
That was a big endeavor for him too.
Yeah. Big endeavor, amazing. And then that whole last sequence where he has to do the silly dances and, fight against a cartoon nemesis, with cartoon claws and hammers and stuff. And he's got to do this. And the final battle scene, and I pointed this out to Noelle, is like, look at what Robert Zemeckis does. If say Bob Hoskins gets thrown into a table or rather a dresser, and the drawer opens, and then the camera holds on that for a second and then cuts to another scene, and then later on comes back to that scene with he's already saying this is important. It's gonna pay dividends in the end. The hammer that was done earlier in the film makes an appearance later at the end. Everything that Zemeckis puts in the background of scenes plays out again in some other format, and that's how a good director does stuff. He plants seeds, and then it makes you go, oh wait, yeah, that's right. The hammer was there. It was if he wouldn't have hit that drawer earlier in the movie, he wouldn't have gotten that hammer, and he wouldn't have succeeded. So it was all done. It's great seeing that, and just the everything, all the Easter eggs. The one interesting Easter egg that I'm just going to say, and then we'll end the show, is Felix the cat. He was around during that time also, but he was not given. They were not did not give him permission to be used in the film. They had to get permission from Disney and Warner Brothers to use their characters. But the people who owned Felix the Cat, they didn't want to give him permission to use it. They thought the movie was going to bomb or was going to be stupid or wasn't right. But Zemeckis was tricky. He's in it, but it's the tunnel that leads to Toontown. If you look at the top of it, Felix the Cat's face is on it. And I didn't know that until I did one of those they did the behind the scenes thing like you were talking about. And they mentioned that. And I guess technically, you know, he's not in the film because it's such a small background scene and you wouldn't notice it unless someone pointed it out to you. So I guess they couldn't technically get sued for using it.
It's like with music. Like if they play less than 30 seconds, you don't have to pay royalty for it. But if you play more than 30 seconds, then you have to pay. That's
So I thought that was just kind of a neat little Easter egg that Felix the Cat's head is his face is on the tunnel.
He's going to no matter what. I don't care. But to do that decision, you should have a more major part.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And hey, like that. Hey, we did 15 movies and a little bit over 2 hours, which is. I thought it'd be like 2.5. We're getting better at this because we used to do 2.5 hour shows. Right. It was like
repeats, you know. So very similar taste.
Yep. So, Geri, thank you again. Fantastic list. It is hard to believe. 30 years, 1988. It just doesn't. It doesn't jive.
Little kids. I know.
So weird. Thank you for that, Geri. It's fantastic talking with you as always. We'll think. I think I have a good idea for February, but I have to make sure we didn't do it already. Did we do? I know we did best couples. Have we done worst couples? Like couples. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but like in television and movies, like a couple that we thought was just it didn't work for whatever reason.
That could be good. That could be like
that might be something because I was thinking about. I was like, did we do something?
Or even like you just think didn't have the right chemistry or shouldn't have been paired together.
Yeah, like a good example was even though I haven't seen it, I want to put this on my list, but I haven't seen it. I've heard how horrible the chemistry is between the leads in the 50 Shades movies. And that's the kind of movie you need to have really good chemistry in order for a sex movie, because you want to look at it, Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone had amazingly hot, scorching chemistry in Basic Instinct, and that's why it worked.
Right. No, you're right.
But you know what? She didn't have it with the Baldwin boy and Sliver. I got one of mine already. So I think we'll do it.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah.
Well, look, if we have trouble getting to 10, let's just say 10 right now, and it can be anything really. If you want to do books, TV, movies, it might actually, and it can be characters we don't think should have belonged together or actors, so we can sort of mix it up a little bit. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, actors who they're supposed to have amazing chemistry, but they just don't. And it's obvious. A good example would be, and we've already discussed this also, is Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman.
Oh, that would have been number one, yes.
Bill might be able to. It's a whole month away. We might have forgotten this whole conversation. So,
I don't know. Oof.
Do you want to do something like that then to sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So, movies, books, TV, or in real life, actors who don't have any chemistry. So we can do it like we can call it like the top 10 worst chemistry in films or something like that. So I think we'll stick with that because that's Valentine's Day-esque, and that's kind of good because we've already done the best couples. So let's do the reverse. Let's do the worst. So we'll do that. If we have trouble, DM me and we'll figure something else out. Or if I have trouble, I might say, can we maybe make it 5? I don't think so. I think I can dig into 10. I think I can figure out 10.
So with all that media, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've got about 3 on my mind right now. And then if I start looking at more along the lines of I won't. If I start thinking about the actors who don't have chemistry, I'll probably get a lot more out of that. So,
yeah.
Okay, so on that note, bada bing, bada bang. Next week is a solo show. I'll probably be talking about this madness in Washington. I always like to do my political stuff by myself sometimes. So, and whatever else happens next week. It's supposed to be nice.
Washington, what are you talking?
It's not really madness because, hey, the crazies are not in the house anymore. So it's going to be peaceful and quiet now. It's going to be wonderful. But it'll probably more lines of we'll see what interests me on the internet and anything else that happens. It's going to be the first week, Geri, where the kids are going to have a full week of school.
I know.
Jeez, because we've had
style having them home. Can't get anything done, you know.
And it's killing me right now because
you guys with work, you kind of have to juggle your schedules.
Yeah, I'm lucky because I just had my 10 years, so I got 5 more days of vacation. So I now have 15 days of vacation. So yeah, it's good because I've already used 2 from for
up into hours. Can you do like?
It's for a full day, basically. So I get like 15 hours. I get 15 days vacation, so it's 8 hours. I guess I could, but I took the whole day off, both snow days, because Dawn is the only person who can really do her job, so she really has to go in. Yeah, and we also take turns. I mean, she was off with them for Martin Luther King Day, so if we have another snow day and schools are closed, she will probably take the day off, and I'll go into work. So we work it out, but it's just I've already had 2. I've already used 2 of my vacation days because of it. I was like, it's okay, but I have 13 more, and that's okay. So we're good. But enough of that talk. So we'll figure out what's going on next week. Is going to be a beautiful week weather-wise, more temperate temperatures, more normal for January. No snow that I can see in the forecast. A little bit of rain coming early next week, but that's about it. And it's going to be like 60 next Saturday. So
oh my goodness, that's crazy.
It is crazy, but hey, it's the Eastern Shore. I mean, the the Eastern Seaboard. Jersey's part of that. Delaware, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania. We get all the weird weather. So, all right. So, Geri, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your weekend. Everybody else out there, hey, 15 movies, 1988. And then while we were going through them, all these stars just started. It was 88 was a big year, man. I mean, it rose into prominence and stuff like that. And The Accused being, the beginning of the social pictures, stuff like that in the present time. Yeah, it's a great year in film. I didn't think it would be, but hey, I'm surprised.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care, everybody. Have fun, and I'll see you all next week. All right, this is Well Press. Stop broadcast.